It seems to be working. Hello, YouTube. We're just going to do our recording for the latest episode of the Everything F1 podcast. I'm going to pop everything on record. I'm just going to a bit of feedback. Did you hear that then? Feedback.
No.
Right, good. Hello and welcome to the Everything F1 podcast with me, James Tiller, and alongside me today is just Coops. Hi, Coops. How are you?
Hello, how are you? I'm good.
Hello. Yeah, I'm not too bad. Thank you very much. We're just having a quick one today, I think, just to chat about any news that's dropped since the last podcast, and chat about our expectations from testing, which are starting tomorrow. Cars on the track, obviously in Bahrain for the test. Just have a little discussion about the F1 world and everything that's going on around the paddock. Um, Coops, what have you been up to this week? Anything that stood out for you that you wanted to discuss?
No, I mean, general day-to-day worky stuff, adulting, that's what I do, other than
Hmm.
talking about cars that go zooming around the track. So,
Hmm.
pretty
Yeah,
boring, possibly.
yeah. It's boring because we know we're getting ever so close now to the season starting. So we're probably just comparing everything to most enjoyable time of the year, which of course is F1 season, and that is just around the corner. It's within reach. We can just feel it in the distance. But yeah, we're Everything F1. You can find us all on our social platforms. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. You can find us at the handle at JoinEF1 on every single channel apart from TikTok, which is at EF1 Official. You can also find us on our website, www.everythingf1.com. And of course, we'd love it if you'd hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast streaming service, and of course, YouTube and all these other places, to follow us there to get all of our latest podcasts in your earlobes as soon as they drop. We're also sponsored by a company called theraceworks.com. They can deliver you merchandise all across the UK, all across the world, and they can get your favorite teams merch at your doorstep within a few days, depending on where you are, of course, around that world. So get yourself over there, support us by supporting them, and get yourself some great merch using the discount code EF1 at checkout for an additional 10% off site wide. Okay, Coops, the last week I wasn't on the podcast, but you were discussing lots of the news that has gone on, but you've also discussed the F1 75 event that was happening the day afterwards, the recording of the podcast. How did you feel that event went? Were you a fan of how the event went? Were you not a fan of how the event went? Were there things that surprised you, things that you didn't like? Give us a little rundown of what your thoughts were on that event.
I liked it. I
Okay.
thought it was fun. Uh, it's one of those kind of things where I think it set itself up where it didn't take itself too seriously. It kind of knew what it was.
Mm.
Jack Whitehall's jokes, 99% of them landed. They were funny. They had a good laugh. They were, current. Uh,
Hmm.
you know, talking about, total wolf. It's nightmare because the partner's left for an Italian stallion, that sort of thing. Touching on
Yeah, yeah.
Verstappen and George Russell not liking each other. The fact that Formula One's that minted because you're coming to watch a show where all 10 cars' liveries are exactly the same as last year, but they didn't want to lose the deposit. You know,
Yeah.
it just seemed to work for me, to be
Mm.
honest. I mean, was it 100% perfect? No. I think the biggest problem is the musical guests that they brought on just weren't really quite right. Like
Mm.
what it was. I mean, I'm not a Take That fan, obviously. I don't know who the country guy is. Can't
Are
remember the
you
guy's name.
sure?
Who's Keith, Keith, as they say up here. And Machine Gun Kelly. Yeah, who? I like, but all in all, I liked it. There were it was good. It opened the eyes, I think, to the. I mean, the FIA did react and put out a statement, which I'm sure we'll touch on, regards to the crowd's behaviour. And it
Mm.
was interesting that the fact that the FIA's logo got put on the screens and was probably the worst booed moment. Um, And the fact that they've came out and actually said going to wrap it in the nicest possible way about booing about Verstappen and Christian Horner and Red Bull reaction.
Mm,
Clearly, they must have noticed the reaction that was given to them in
absolutely.
FIA
That's
in general.
definite. That's definitely it. Hey, don't boo us. We do our best. I'm like,
They can't
no.
come out and say don't booze
Mm,
because you know they'll just
that's
booze
just going to
more.
make people do it more. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's reasons why we're doing it. There's reasons why
Mm.
we're not we. I'm saying we collectively, not something I waste my time doing, but in general, there's reasons why it's being done.
There's
And
absolutely justification, not for necessarily booing, but for disliking elements of what the FIA have done, especially over the last few years with the president's, sticking his nose in every single opportunity he possibly can do. But yeah, let's talk about that booing. They obviously released that statement, and there's been a few statements across from teams and stuff like that as well to kind of back this up and kind of hammer the kind of feeling and thoughts through, make it kind of hopefully heard by all the fans. But just don't boo them. They're doing their best, and they're doing it there. With nobody should be subjected to booing, especially the likes of Max Verstappen, who's obviously a very talented world champion 4 times now, and the Red Bull team, Christian Horner, they do a lot for the sport. They deserve a bit of respect when they at these events. Max has actually said he's potentially going to boycott any events like that in the future, especially if they're hosted in the UK. I saw something along those lines, but we'll see how much he has to stick to that because of sponsorships and stuff like that. Because the UK is quite a large audience to boycott.
yeah, I mean, it is at large. Max is very good at reacting impulsively to a point in regards to things like that.
I'm doing this.
Which
Sorry about
is
that.
uh, which is something you got to take with a pinch of salt. Is he going to boycott it? Of course he isn't, because I mean the sponsors effectively pay his wages, and regardless of what
Yeah.
Max Verstappen is, Max is going to turn up. Max is going to go and do what needs to be done and
Mm.
say what needs to be said, and smile and nod and whatever it is that he needs to do. The 99% of the things that the drivers do outside of driving, they probably don't like. So, but they've all got to do it, and they're
Yeah.
not going to. If they say no, what they're going to, drive. There's what people need to remember is that as much as Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris, and the rest of the guys are the drivers and kind of the face, they're still employees of a company, and you've
Yeah,
still got to
exactly.
do what you've got to do. So,
Yeah. Exactly. Still responsibilities to your, especially the sponsors and your company, obviously. And was the booing bad? Yes, the booing was bad, but I heard cheers for Max as well. It wasn't all boos. It wasn't, I certainly think he was shown some love as well. He had a bit of attention from Jack Whitehall, obviously taking the mickey at the start, saying, "Oh, we all know who absolutely loves to be here, and is all about." Some drivers are all
yeah,
about their racing. I thought that was quite funny and comedic, and his face popped up on the screen, and there was cheers for him. There was a lot of love for Max. I just think obviously these scenarios where there's booing, it's bad. I'm not justifying it, but they tend to focus on the negative rather than focusing on the positive, because it just gives people something to whinge about, something to complain about, and people, especially us Brits or the media, they like to have something to whinge about.
of
They
course they do.
like to make a story of anything, especially when there's not much else going on around the circuit and around racetracks and whatnot at the moment. So slim pickings in terms of what we can talk about pre-season. Um, did you think they gave each team enough time? Because that was one thing I kind of when I watched it, I felt some of it was rushed. Like drivers only got like to say a line. I can understand the need to keep the show moving and rolling and getting people on, getting people off, and I bet it was a logistical nightmare. But I do feel we didn't really get much information from each team. It was kind of like, hi, oh, this is, X, Y, and Z from Visa Cash App. It was, there was a few comedy elements in the introduction, but in terms of actually interviews from the drivers, you didn't get a massive interview from each of them. Which I think as fans going to see, I think they might have preferred that over, say, an additional tune from Take That or, you know, one of the other performance artists there. What do you reckon?
Well, everybody got 7 minutes, and they were told, "There's your 7 minutes. Do what you want." So you had Steak, who done quite well with kind of drummers and a really cool kind of anime
Yeah, I
inspired
like that. I really like that.
intro video. Then the car came out, they had a couple of lines. Then you had the bizarre DJ set with a weird ass DJ for Alpine. Even Flavio was like,
Yeah.
"Hey, what? All right." And then this car came out, and then you had Red Bull doing a whole car culture thing, and everybody in the building knew that the same Red Bull car was going to come out,
Yeah.
exactly the same as before, for the
Yeah.
last God knows how many years. Uh, so I think it's up to I think the teams maybe if they do another one next year because it has from what we've seen the word on the street is it's generally been quite popular. It's been well received. They've done a decent
Mm,
job. So this could be something that starts off the season maybe not in exactly the same way but something similar.
mm,
Um, maybe teams will start to be a wee bit more inventive because it seemed that they kind of held it back a wee bit. James Vowles came out and spoke on his own, and then the car came out. Like I say, Alpine, their head guy or the team principal, it was a very bizarre response. He said, it was like one line, would you, oh, we need to do better, or something really quite weird and kind of off the cuff.
mm.
You're like, oh, okay. And then with Red Bull, they just didn't speak. And that was made well beforehand. That was a decision that was made before to not have them speaking. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't think it was necessarily the fault of the organisers. The teams were told, like, this you've got 7 minutes, do what you want, as long as you release the car. Which isn't the 2025 car, it's literally a show car with the new sponsors and the new
Mm,
look. Unless you're Red Bull or McLaren, it didn't really change the car much.
mm.
Then, you know, I think it's up to the teams to be a wee bit more fun with it, and maybe they'll be a bit more relaxed. If they do something similar next year, maybe they could
Yeah.
be a bit more fun with it. Uh,
Yeah. As I say, I think some of them did quite well. Like I say, Steak, had a bit of a bit of drama about it, bit of, performance on the stage, whereas a lot of it was like just video content. And if I was going to this kind of auditorium full of, this one of the things I thought about it afterwards. I thought if I was going to an event I wouldn't want to just be watching the screen when I've got all those talented people on the ground itself.
mhm.
I'd want to hear more personal things about them. And as I say, I get it, it's got to be a show, it's got to be entertaining, but I can watch a TV screen at home. But so I don't want to be watching a TV screen when I'm at this sort of event. And I think just a little bit more from the drivers. We got a bit from the team principal, a bit from the FIA. Stefano Domenicali obviously had a chat, and yeah, there was really, really good elements. I just think it needs a tiny bit of a tweak to make it, 100% better. And as I say, 7 minutes for each team. I think it needs to be used better for each team slightly. That's just my own personal opinion. I did generally enjoy what I watched, but this is me being uber critical and spotting things that I'd change if I was to do it myself in the future.
I mean, if you think about it, next year would be a good way to do it again anyway, because you've got these major rule changes.
Hmm.
Red Bull could surprise people and come out with something new because it's the new rules, the new look cars, and it's the tie-in with Ford that's starting from 2026. So,
Hmm.
that might be the time that you'll see something different from them. Yeah, I mean, arguably probably the best livery and surprise was Racing Bulls that came out, went from all blue and a kind of metallic shiny blue to
Mm.
white with a more prominent Red Bull look on the nose and the air intake, which worked well. It works better than before with a kind of silver Red Bull car on the kind of nose inlet. And just before we started recording, I saw some renders of the car for Mercedes, and it actually is a nicer looking car in the renders than it does in the kind of dull look O2. And it was difficult to see what they'd done different, and you kind of got glimpses. You're like, right, okay, the red Ineos isn't there, So that's a big thing. Like, what is
Mm.
it they've actually done? And then when you see the renders, you're like, oh, right, okay, I get it. And the same for Alpine. I think Alpine disappointed me at the time, but then when
Right.
you see the renders, it was they've got the pink, and they've got a very kind of striking metallic-y blue, a lot
Mm.
less carbon fiber, beer on this one. So
They're
that
not
again,
necessarily trying to lose as much weight as possible
yeah,
because
well,
the car being super overweight this year.
yeah, that was the failed crash testing, and I think Williams had something similar where they had to it failed its load tests or something, and that's why they were behind. Uh, so yeah, there was a couple that disappointed. Like I say, the show itself I found really good, and I loved the fact that Gordon Ramsay broke the swearing ban while asked about the swearing ban. Uh, and the fact that they were ready with somebody on the mic, ready to turn it off as soon as he swore. Like they
Mm.
clearly had somebody waiting with the button just to knock it. Uh, and also it's even better that he's Scottish and said it. So uh,
Oh, you can
it's a
claim
proud
him.
moment, proud moment. But yeah, all in all, I would give it a solid 8.5, 9 out of 10. To be fair, I think very much within the first few minutes when Jack was doing his opening monologue and the jokes hit, I thought this will be fine. I think I'm going to quite enjoy this. Uh, it was unfortunately it was quite difficult for me trying to run the Everything F1 Twitter or X to try and get the images onto the socials to show people what it was while I was trying to do it. Wasn't very easy to find pictures. Some of them didn't. Some of the teams did put their pictures up from the event and not renders. Some didn't. So I do
Mm.
apologise for anybody who's trying to follow. But yeah, over testing is the next big thing, isn't it? That's our next step toward the start of the season.
It is. So testing is starting tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. We're recording late Tuesday evening. Um, I'm excited for testing. I think obviously we've got our closest season in theory that we've had in a long time starting this year. Obviously, it's the fourth generation of these cars for the fourth year that they've been mastering it. There's not going to be loads of massive changes as you've said on the released images and the whatnot that's been released over the last few days of actual cars or in inverted commas actual cars. There's not massive differences, but they will be kind of just changes that will hopefully be tweaking everything to bring everything to a more level playing field. Which team are you looking forward to after looking at all the pictures the most seeing on the track tomorrow?
Oh, it's got to be McLaren, and that's not because I'm a McLaren fan. It's because they are the team to beat, and they are the team that everyone wants to get toward. It's not Red Bull anymore. We've had two
Mm-hmm.
years where Red Bull 1 year absolutely destroyed everybody. The start of last year arguably was what run the drivers' championship for Max because
All right, carry on. Sorry, I was just trying to rectify my connection issues that I had.
um aye so the start of last season is what basically won the drivers' championship for Max Verstappen. And this year it's the conversation is swayed. It's McLaren as constructors champions, the main ones, with Ferrari mostly in second, with Red Bull there or thereabouts, and Mercedes there or thereabouts. And I think that's arguably because McLaren and Ferrari, both with their driver lineup, seem to be probably the more secure over the two cars.
Yeah.
And also, uh, with McLaren, the biggest thing for McLaren is the fact that they've been able to articulate all the data from CFD, wind tunnel, everything that they collate. They're able to extrapolate and transfer to the car on the track in a way that it works. There's never been
Mm.
a situation a bit like was it Haas a couple of seasons back? They brought an update and it was a massive big update near the end of the season. It failed. It didn't work.
Mm.
So something between the correlation between the computer and the
Easy for you to
software.
say.
It's not. Trust me, I've tried
Correlation.
that one. Getting the stuff from one bit to the track, we'll go with that. Doesn't it just didn't work? And these
Just
cars
didn't
just
correlate.
it didn't correlate. I just can't.
It's
Uh, So yeah,
Too heavy on the R's for a Scot.
it's the tongue that it just
Correlate.
just I go anyway. So yeah, it doesn't transfer. They don't speak to each other, and these cars they're very hard. You can only do so much with these cars because you can't replicate the ground effect in the wind tunnel because you can't get it
Mm,
low enough to the belt. Once you hit a certain point with the belt, the model car will end up just flying into the wind tunnel. Uh, so you're kind of, and I'm not guessing because Formula One don't guess, but there's an element of assumption that this will be
mm.
the right thing to do, and Mercedes found that at their cost because they got the science wrong, as Toto said. So there is elements with teams that they haven't been able to do that, whereas McLaren were the team that done it and have done it consistently.
Mm.
And Ferrari, we said this last year that Hamilton has went to Ferrari at the right time. They've got a more stable situation. It's a lot more relaxed. Ferrari is a very bizarre entity within the Formula One world, but Fred Vasseur has brought this kind of a more relaxed and chilled out way of working.
Mm.
That, like, the team, by the looks of it, are allowed to try things, and if it doesn't work, they're not going to lose their job or be moved to a different area, which has happened in the past within Ferrari. There was always that element for me that Ferrari just didn't push the boat because of the fear of repercussion rather than taking it on as a team and going, yeah, okay, that didn't work. So let's move on and figure out what else we can do.
Yeah.
Whereas that Mercedes were very good at that, especially while they were winning and, when they were expected to do well, it didn't work. Total came out and went, yeah, no, didn't work. We'll go back and figure it out. There was no insinuation or even expectation that a person or one of the head guys or some technician or manager would get moved on or something, whereas
Mm.
Ferrari, it was a regular occurrence.
Yeah, they
Uh,
were just changing the personnel just too willy-nilly after say one bad season, two bad seasons. They,
mhm.
chopping heads. People didn't feel secure. There just wasn't a good culture. Obviously, there's massive pressure being in the Ferrari anyway. We know that. Obviously, the Tifosi are just diehard fans of,
Oh, I
Ferrari
mean,
and the whole team. But so that you understand the pressure coming from the country and the country folk in Italy. But that pressure pot didn't wasn't helping and wasn't delivering any results because there was just too much pressure and people were too scared to do extreme things or too scared to kind of break the mold because they'd be worried that they were going to lose their job by
you
doing such a
wouldn't
thing.
see the Ferrari team coming out with das like
Mm,
Mercedes did a few years ago. You wouldn't have a young Italian engineer coming to one of the head guys in Ferrari a few years back and saying, "Look, I think if we can do this, so we can look at
mm,
this. This might help us." It's like not to say they wouldn't have come up with the idea, but they wouldn't have
mm.
followed up on the idea purely because of fear of being shot down, and then they've been remembered for the wrong things. Where I think at the time when Mercedes came out with Das, for example, that I mentioned a second ago, it was kind of like, actually, you kind of think that eventually it's went up the chain through the honchos. It's got to maybe
Mm,
Toto Wolff at some point, and they've kind of looked at it and went, that's quite entertaining. Maybe they've
mm.
took the idea that came from somebody a wee bit lower down and then said to somebody higher up, right, check the numbers, have a wee look at it, see what you think. Is
Is
it
the
something
grey
you can work
area
with?
available in the
Yeah.
in the rule book that we can kind of exploit? Yeah, absolutely.
So they would have allowed that to gestate, they would allow that to mature. It might not have been exactly the same, idea that came out, but it led down a path which, they went on and went, like, let's see where this goes. Let's see if this works. Is there some merit to this idea? And for a long time, I don't think Ferrari allowed that or
Mm.
reciprocated it when you came up with
Creative
ideas and that.
freedom, giving their
Exactly.
team
So,
kind of the ability to feel like, I'm here to contribute. I think I've got a good idea. Let's just run with it and see what happens.
yeah. Whereas now, I think Ferrari are in that point, especially under Fred Vasseur, where they've been allowed to be given that freedom and they've got stability. They've got a young Charles Leclerc in there. They've pulled up the queue to bring in Hamilton, who knows Fred Vasseur from his junior days. He's got a relationship with him. Who was
Hmm.
looking for something new and a challenge. I mean, it was clear in the last year or two of Mercedes who was just ready to move on. And every relationship, you need to kind of there's always that point where it's either the sport or the car,
Hmm.
the team. I mean, he's made some big changes. He's brought back Angela Cullen.
Yeah, she's
He's
back with him on the grid.
Yep. Uh, he's just there's I've just shared some pictures in our Slack of Lewis Hamilton's new lid for this season, and it's very simple. It's the Tifosi Canary yellow or
Yeah.
Maranello yellow, and it's got the red highlights with the outline of his what his design usually is. Very simple considering what he's done in the last few years. Uh, so he's ready. You can see he's ready for the challenge. You can see he's up
Mhm.
for a good fight. Yeah, I mean, I'm interested. What I think for testing, going back to the points we started talking about, uh, there's always one team where things just don't work. A couple of seasons ago, I think it was it Aston Martin that spent a lot of time in the garage because they had issues. There's always one
Mm.
team where they come out, they do a few laps, and then Ted Kravitz goes, "Oh, and the Alpine's got the screens up. Yep, the floor's off. That's his day done." And you're like, they've done 12 laps.
That's it from
Whereas
for the 3 days, I think it was.
yeah, and then you've got another team that's like, Lando Norris is half a day and or first full day, and he's done 307 laps.
Yeah.
So there's always a team that just doesn't quite hit the points, and sometimes that's a marker to say, "Oh, what's wrong?"
Mm.
Uh, I could say that, and every team just gets on with it, and it's not the most eventful testing, but history dictates that there's usually one team where something isn't quite working. And most
Mm.
fans, I think that let's face it, the fans that watch testing are more the hardcore fans. It's not the casuals
Yeah, definitely.
um, that come in to watch it. Some might end up heading that way, but you're not your casual fans that are going to get up at 6:45 on a Wednesday morning in the UK to watch a car just go round. There's no action. I mean, it's not that type of thing.
Yeah. Exactly. And the
Uh,
times you can't really look into the times either because the
no,
times aren't so, they're not indicative of how good a car is because you don't know the fuel loads, you don't know the tires that tire ages that they're using for these individual laps and whatnot. So it's all very kind of cloak and dagger, kind of sandbags on the back. Are they in the full setup for the fast lap, or are they kind
no,
of
no.
on
It's
their
all
long
very
distance race pace? It's just very secretive and very challenging to kind of decipher, really.
it's all very speculative in training in pre-season testing, I should say. And there is ideas. You've got a lot of experts that are there that are able to say, that car looks decent in the corners. That car looks like an absolute mess. This car looks pretty, but it's slow. So, a lot of what I get my information from is just reading into what comes out from the track. And,
Mm,
sometimes you can kind of look at it and go, oh, that look, Hamilton is working really hard to get around that corner. What's going on there? You can,
mm.
but again, it's speculation. We're never going to know until you get to Australia and they do the qualifying exactly where they are. Uh,
Yeah,
so but it's always good to see them on track. They've got their liveries, it's the cars. You can start looking to see what wee tiny innovation have they got in because this is the last year of the rule set.
hmm,
Where do we look what we're looking for? Or, the Alpine looks nice, or the Haas has really moved on, or
yeah,
well Aston Martin are sliding backwards. What's going on there? There's always bits of speculation and there's wee bits you can take. There is bits you can take from the testing days that you can then look at and go, what's happened? Like this
yeah.
might translate to being a bad season. And for us fans that watch it, we just hope that it's not the team that we're following, whatever team that may be, if it's Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, Hamilton fans will be wishing when he goes out that he is going to bin it. Antonelli will definitely hope that he doesn't do that in the Mercedes,
Mm,
and with 6 or 7, 6, I think, rookies doing their first proper test. That's the part that's going to be interesting. I think is Jack Doohan going to survive all the pressures for the fact that they've signed Colapinto for 3 years? Definitely
yeah,
not
sure.
signed him for 3 years if he's going to be a reserve driver. That's not going to happen.
No, Jack Doohan's been reserve driver for them for about that long, if not more.
Well, that's
So
true. So yeah, there's a lot of things to try and assume from testing, but I think we don't know unless you're there. You're not really
no,
going to know
just
what's going
excited to
on.
see cars on track. Just
Yeah.
excited to hear the sound of the engines. Let's hope that, we see a couple of teams at least give us a bit of a glimpse at a fast lap. Maybe, yeah, I know the sandbags will be on, and they won't do, extreme laps, but it'd be good to see a few teams at least giving a little squirt on the accelerator just to show us what they can really do. I'm hoping, like probably every single person, that it is as competitive as we all have been talking about it being. The most disappointing thing will be, you know, we watch testing and Red Bull dominates again. They've found an extra, 6 tenths or something in the aerodynamics or whatever, or they've just found another golden bullet that pushes them to the front again for another season. We don't want to see that. Not that we don't want to see Red Bull winning. I absolutely don't care if Red Bull win. If they do win, that's fantastic. What we want is close competitive racing, and because it's the fourth year of these regulations, we are expecting a close race, and I just hope our expectations are at least met, and we get two, three, maybe four teams competing for the front of the grid. That's my dream. I don't care who it is. I'm obviously wearing a Mercedes t-shirt. I understand it probably looks like I'm a Mercedes fan. I have lots of different F1 gear from lots of different teams. It's just I like F1 gear. So like, same as you, Coops, isn't it? We've got
Yeah.
ads. Probably we do favour McLaren a little bit, me and you, but we do like to, just enjoy the F1 teams as they are. See the underdog winning sometimes. Just the close battles at the front, and in general, just good racing. So yeah, that's. I'm hoping that this season's going to be a great one. Do you?
I don't think I really need to hope. I think it will. I think the second half of last season showed that the
Mm.
powers is and the expectations have kind of skewed that, you know, the chances. I think Verstappen winning a fifth championship will be the fact that if it becomes a fight with more than one team, and you're talking
Mm.
3 or 4 teams, that they're all too busy tripping over each other and taking points from each other, which
Yeah.
could then allow someone who probably, over the grand scheme of it, might not deserve it if you're looking like for pure domination. But if someone's consistently taking third, and then gets a couple of wins together, they could be all that could be all it needs to do to win
Mm.
a title, especially if it's so competitive and so close. So that's the interesting part for me. I think we're all, as a Formula One fan base, if you're not Red Bull, probably we're all kind of at the point where we don't want to wake up and just be like, "I've got Red Bull 1-2."
Mm.
We've done that for a year and a bit, especially at the start of last season when it was what, four one
Probably
twos and
two
five
two
or
years and a
something.
bit.
Uh, well, I mean the sheer domination in terms
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
like, yeah, like we just didn't bother really discussing first place. We knew what was going to happen. It was
Mm.
almost similar to if this podcast ran during Michael Schumacher's Ferrari domination, like Ferrari 1-2, right? So who's going to be third? Like, that's the interesting
Let's
part.
get
Let's
excited
see.
about third.
But whereas now is it going to be Norris? Is it going to be Piastri? Is Antonelli going to be able to show something? Is Lawson going to be able to show? What's Hamilton going to do against Leclerc? There's so many things. And, out of all of that, I've only touched on one and a half rookies because Lawson's done a few races already. There's another five of them kicking about.
Yeah.
Like, how are they going to do? There's so many wee storylines and things going on. Our
Behrman. So
stake.
let's list them. Who've we got? We've got Ollie Behrman,
Yep.
who's driving for
Has
Haas. We've got Jack
do.
Doohan, which we mentioned for Alpine. Kimi Antonelli for Mercedes, obviously. I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
Bortoleto at stake.
Bortoleto at stake, exactly. Liam Lawson at Red Bull, which obviously, he's had a bit of time in the RB.
But technically,
Uh,
he is. And is it Isaac Hajar in the Racing Bulls?
yeah, Isaac Hadjar in the Racing
So
Bulls.
that's
Yeah,
that's the six.
mm. So
So,
yeah,
so
so Yeah, Lawson hasn't had a full season, has he? So he's only had
No.
a number of races. So it's his first full season. So it's still a rookie season. And then that's in the big boy team of Red Bull. So yeah, we've got a lot to look forward to in terms of the rookies. I'm excited. It's been a few years since we've had a decent amount of rookies on the track. It's nice to see new names. It's nice to see, an actual rotation of drivers to come in and watch, and let's hope that some of them become the next greats, like the ones that we're quite used to watching currently on the grid. Has there been any other news drops that kind of piqued your interest over the last week or so in the motorsport world? Doesn't necessarily have to be F1, could be anything else that you might have seen.
Uh, I think that is it the drivers GTPA or something connected to the drivers are wanting to have a discussion with Ben Sulayem about the swearing ban thing that's going on. I,
Yes, yeah.
I I think that from my understanding is that they're basically looking for clarity and what does it mean? Because
Mm,
it's all about the morality, bringing Formula One into kind of distributing morality things, and it's very willy the way they're written it, and I think it's cynic in me wonders has that been done on purpose so they're able to
mm,
use to kind of justify like we're giving you £10,000 and euro fine and 2 points off your championship thing because you said shit when you crashed the car.
mm,
You know, has it been really just to kind of to allow them to justify things, or is it not? And
mm.
in all honesty, I kind of think that Formula One, not Formula One, sorry, the FIA, because Formula One have got nothing to do with this. This is an FIA governing body rule
Yeah.
that's came in. They've got other things they need to sort out before they start going on about swearing. Yes, okay, don't have the drivers swearing during press conferences.
Mm,
That's understandable. You come to a press conference, especially before the race, and you talk. If you do it by accident, apology, sorry, fine. Press conferences after the race, especially if you've had a poor one, and it's understandable, but kind of remind them, hey, watch yourself, which is what it was before. But to
yeah.
have to kind of say that you're not allowed to swear while you're flying around a track at 200 mile an hour wheel to wheel, like, come on. You
Yeah.
don't
It's
need to
crazy.
broadcast it.
Yeah.
Like you bleep it out anyway. So what's the issue here? Like, they're adults. Like, get a grip of yourselves. So,
Yeah, I mean, footballers, you wouldn't say the same thing to footballers. You see footballers on a pitch, for 90 minutes, and they're swearing at swearing at their opposition. They're swearing at the referee on the pitch. They're not exactly, held up to these standards and they're probably more seen than for a Formula One driver and heard during the match during a match slash during a race than a Formula One driver is. Obviously, we hear the individual audio transmissions from whatever F1 TV decides to put out at that time, but they don't have to put that out. There's the ability to stop the swearing being broadcast before um, it becomes an issue for the individual driver themselves. The driver shouldn't be held accountable for what's happening, in their brain at, nearly 300 mile an hour, going around a circuit when they're trying to overtake around corners that, are the most dangerous circuits in the world. It's ridiculous. And it's a point that's been labored beyond any need really. And it just seems like it's a kind of I guess, diversion tactic to me. Let's divert from the mistakes and all the rubbish that happened because of us and the things that we've done over the past few seasons, and let's talk about swearing because that's what we can control that, and we can look good, we can look like these heroes that are. Helping kids enjoy the sport more because they don't have to listen and be witness to swearing. And I'm like, you know what? Kids going to hear swearing. You're probably hearing their parents swear at the TV when their favorite driver gets punted off anyway. But I'm not saying it should happen, but it's a fact of life, isn't it? People swear in certain circumstances, and you know, F1 don't have to broadcast it.
well, exactly. I mean, FIA just tell F1 this is a new directive about what you can and can't broadcast when it comes to the radio stuff. That's it.
Hmm.
They bleep it out anyway, and that's it. If people, what more do they want to do about it? What more?
Hmm.
Because is it going to stop these multi-millionaire race drivers from swearing? for a few quid. No, it's not.
No.
You know,
It's
and
stupid. It's like they used to. I'm sure they used to do it, and it was back in the day when the radio broadcasts were first being aired. If a driver was to swear, they wouldn't air it at all. So what they would do is they would give tactical kind of information and swear like you would, like punctuation through the sentence. So therefore, it wouldn't get broadcast. So the other teams wouldn't necessarily have access to it immediately, like we do nowadays. So I think it was like a tactic from the teams. Oh yeah, make sure when we're giving instructions, F blind, say as many of the swear words as you can. It'll never get broadcast. Therefore, we can kind of keep it secret for that little bit longer. So I mean, that kind of tactics might come in if we won't broadcast it if you swear as a rule comes in. So they've got to be mindful of that. But then there's people. There's going to be people on the sitting there in the each garage listening to the team's radios anyway. So it's a different
like
world than it was,
yeah,
10,
like you
15
say,
years ago.
it's just it's a battle that doesn't need to be started or fought or in any way. Like really, it's one of those things that it was a bit like the no jewellery rule, where it was they went on about jewellery. Hamilton turned up with all his jewellery on. And very quickly, it wasn't mentioned again.
Mm.
You know, it's that kind of thing of it's just a waste of time. It's a waste of time and energy. There's no need for it. So
It seems like personal vendettas from the man at the top, if I'm honest. It doesn't seem like actually a logical step.
it doesn't, and
There's it doesn't kind of stick with the logic that's sensible for the sport, really, or it's helpful for the sport. It doesn't promote anything within the sport. It doesn't make our sport look great if you're having to have, the teacher come down with the cane and saying, "We're going to smack your bottoms if you're naughty," kind of thing. If you say a bad word.
and Ben Silly is an ex-race driver, albeit rally. I'm sure he's dropped a few clangers in his time as he's took a corner too sharp and ripped off a wheel or whatever it is
Mm,
that he's done. So, maybe it's a wee bit for me, it's a bit more galling that it's an ex-race driver who's decided this is what's happening. And again, is the cynicism in me just basically being like, yeah, because it's a power play, he wants to basically
mm,
tell them that he's the boss. Like, I think everyone in Formula One knows who's the head of the FIA and not for a good reason.
mm,
So I don't think you need to draw any more light to this. I mean, interestingly, I was just checking to see if there was any news. He has hinted that there is a possibility, or a minor possibility, that Formula One could go back to V10, but with sustainable fuel, rather
okay.
than going for down the electricity route and the batteries. Now, as a purist, get the V10s back in, because the reason that we've got such big Formula One cars is because of all the batteries and because of the electrical
Yeah.
components of the cars. So are we surely in 2025, 26, or whatever this discussion was about, that you could come up with a V10 with sustainable fuels and have some sort of electrical element to a degree, but
Mm.
not to where we're at. Uh,
No, could you imagine a lovely screaming V10?
oh,
Whew.
well, sounding amazing, flying around Monaco to the point we can actually pass because they can make the car smaller. It would be nice. And I think,
Mm,
you know, who was it? It was it Richard Hammond, his name is, from Top Gear, talked about, was it Germany? Instead of coming up with the infrastructures to try and get all electric cars, they just turned around and
mm,
said that every single car has to have sustainable fuels. Because the technology to turn an old car that are able to use sustainable fuels is there, and it's relatively inexpensive compared
mm.
to going out and spending the amount of money you would need to spend on an electric car.
Yeah.
Now, doing my bit, I would say go electric, but the cheapest car in the UK to go electric, you're talking somewhere in around the realms of £30,000.
Mm,
It's not, and then you've got the infrastructure. It's just not. They don't have it in the UK, and other countries are probably similar. So, maybe in terms of sustainability with, getting rid of fossil fuels, maybe that is a way that we should look at.
mhm.
are we overcomplicating matters? Why it should be step back in general and can't see the wood for the trees and just step back and think, hold on, there's a simpler solution to this. Every single car made after this year has to run on sustainable fuel.
Mm.
That's it. And it's your carbon footprint and all that.
Synthetic fuel. It'll all be synthetic rather than oil based.
Yeah,
But
that's it. It's made off of biodegradable stuff. I'm not, clued up on it. It's something I'll probably look into, but there's so many different ways to make sustainable fuels and biodegradable fuels and biofuels and things like that that don't need the amount of infrastructure, don't need the amount of big plants to build batteries and the amount of energy that's expelled from making them and designing them. You look at the state of Honda or
mm,
the new rules in 2026 where is it the cares that they're getting rid of or the MG
one
UK
of
or the
them.
MG
Yeah,
GA?
yeah, yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's the MG UK they're getting rid of, and the reason they're getting rid of that is because of how complicated it is to make. Like,
Yeah.
okay, well, let's just put a V10 in it that's running sustainable fuel. And you're getting best of both. The old guys like us who've watched it for years with the V10s and V8s were in, and you loved that sound of the car flying back. We're just going to, oh. And then the new people are going to be like, that's what it was like. Like,
Is that what it sounds like? Yes, it's
yes,
ear splitting.
it's unreal. It's you hear it coming from half a lap away, and
Mm,
if you get really into it, you can hear the different manufacturers' cars because they've got
mm,
slightly different pitches and tones. Oh, when was it Fernando Alonso was driving the old V8 or V10 round the track, and Lewis Hamilton stopped an interview to listen to the car going round the track, going past. That says something. Everybody wants to hear
mm.
it. Everyone wants to see it. So I think there needs to be a bit of a discussion in general about this infatuation about the electrical components to cars and the idea that we should all be necessarily fully electric. Okay, let's go. If you can go fully electric, but make it cheap enough that we can do it and access it, fine.
Mm.
But it's not going to happen, and that's the same. Kind of the overspill from Formula One because I'm talking more of like just a layman. The issue is like you look at the amount of technology that has to be designed, the amount of R&D that has to go into these engines, the fact that the car are now they're 2 meters wide. I'm
Mm.
1.88 meters tall. That's 6 foot two. So, you're talking 6.5 foot wide, these
Mm.
cars, just to fit the electrical batteries and components and the amount of weight that they are now because of all those gubbins.
Exactly, yeah.
Like, there's a tipping point where it's just like, where are we going to go to? Like, they've spun it down coming up because they've got rid of that component, but then they've had to increase weights to cover other things. And come on, get rid of that. Put a V10 in it with synthetic fuel. The R&D to design a proper usable synthetic fuel is probably cheaper than what's had to be put out on
Yeah, well,
electrical hybrid engines.
they say with all this renewable energy, or with wind energy, with electrical energy, that solar energy and stuff like that, the actual infrastructure that they and the cost to all that, and for designing, for installing, and to can maintain and whatnot, you don't see a return on the investment. In 20 years of use, so it's not making the money back for the stuff for what you pay out in creating these things. And it's the same with the batteries. Obviously, the batteries are really dangerous. They're really unstable when they're in accidents. And then if that battery was to burn up and go into flames, it's really impossible to kind of put out, and you have to kind of leave it for a while. And it the are the negatives? Do the negatives outweigh the positives in this whole electrical debate? Obviously, there are going to be people that love Formula E, and Formula E is a fantastic series. We enjoy it. But the ardent kind of all electric kind of purists, I guess, that want to push through with this. But I just think there's got to be another way. And like you've discussed, maybe the V10 with synthetic fuels is the proper thing we should be working towards, rather than all this electrical gubbins that really is never going to become, not at the moment, uh, going to become a viable option long term. If you're trying to save money, save the planet, and save all the other things, because the amount of fuel that they burn to make these items, in the plastics that hold them, that's full of oil, that surround and shield these batteries and these, all the wiring that goes on in these cars and that sort of thing. There is really no kind of carbon offset at the moment until they better this technology. The carbon offset that happens is irrelevant. It's minuscule, and it's a long way to go before the carbon offset would be much better than what it currently is, and what they're hoping for in the future. Well, years and years down the line for that. That's why all countries have delayed their all cars must be electric by. It was originally set for 2030. It's now 2035 for the UK, and other countries are doing the same thing. They're like, yeah, it's probably not realistic just yet. Um, and I don't think it'll ever be that way. I think they'll find some other way via synthetic fuels or another method,
And I
maybe
think,
splitting the atom and doing
yeah.
hydrogen powered cars and whatnot before
Well, I mean, hydrogen's
all
coming in.
electric.
The Extreme E's
Exactly.
now moved over to hydrogen.
Yeah.
Uh, but the thing is, the biggest issue for electric cars in general is the infrastructure. It's all to
Mm,
do with I mean, there's Formula E now. Love Formula E. I think it has its place in the world of motorsports. I'm not saying we should ever get rid of it, but they tried to come up with an idea to do fast charging pit stops, and that would come up. That would be a good way of changing the dynamic. It probably would. They can't get that to work properly. They've
mm,
had to delay that for the start of the season. It's supposed to come at some point. I don't know when. Uh, so is it one of those situations like the best analogy is the mouth going faster than the head can come up with the ideas? Is this
mm,
where we're at with it? Well, it's like we need to walk first. If you really want to push it, everyone buying all electric cars, right? Well, get the infrastructure first. Make sure that there's electric pumps where every petrol station is, everywhere, or
mm.
electric chargers, I should say, sorry. That they're there almost as frequent as a petrol station. And then, slowly start getting rid of one pump for the petrol and then, get rid of your diesels and then add in an extra thing. And also the other issue, as you say, is the amount of money it costs to build an electric car. I think the cheapest electric car in the UK, like I said, is like 25 to 30,000 pound now. Not how many not like working class, middle class people are going to afford one of them?
Mm.
And again, that's a smaller one that's probably not suitable for long journeys. So if I want to drive up here from the west of Scotland down to go and watch the Grand Prix at Silverstone, without the infrastructure, I'm not doing it in that car. So
Mm.
what's the incentive for me to buy that car? And Formula One is the pinnacle. I say that lightly, with the quoted fingers of motorsport, and they always prided themselves on coming up with ideas that would filter down through the car industry and help them go certain ways. Is it electric that, is it really what we really want to go down, or is it a hybrid
Mm.
sort of system, or is it sustainable fuels? Is that what we should be looking at?
Yeah.
And if you've got that as a tool at the minute, and if you get sustainable fuels in and every car can work on it without a problem, then the idea of moving over to electricity, it releases that burden, and there's no need to keep moving back all these delays to get rid of it, moving back the time scale. You've got that and say, right, okay, 25 years time, we're going to go this way. And the reason we're doing
Mm.
25 years is we've been able to put in sustainable fuels for all cars. If a
Well,
country can do it, we can all do it.
it's always going to be easier to pour a liquid from a barrel into a tank of a car than it is to charge a battery. You're never going to get instant chargers unless you're starting like bumper cars and having, a piece of wire attached to kind of I don't know, like on the train tracks, have overhead
Yeah.
wires, and you have to have a connected connection to the overhead wires. Unless you're going to directly feed electricity to each car on the road, it's just not going to happen. You're going to have to sit and wait for a battery to charge. So it's always going to be quicker to put a fuel from a pump into a car and set off on your journey than it is to sit there and go in for your coffee and have to sit in with your feet up, read a newspaper or whatever you have to do when you're waiting to fill up your car at a station on route to your final destination. So yeah, maybe I think it's the wrong way to go. I think there's going to be better and bigger brained people coming up with ideas in the future. And I think it's probably, like you say, hydrogen or synthetic fuels that is going to probably win the battle in the long run. Anyway, I think we've kind of had a bit of a tangent there, so let's kind of get back onto Formula One as it were. I've only one note about the GPDA that I wanted to discuss. So that's the Grand Prix Drivers Association. Carlos Sainz has not overtaken, has taken over Sebastian Vettel's position in the GPDA. So he's going to be hit there alongside George Russell as the two drivers representing the rest of the grid of drivers, making the decisions, questioning the FIA, hopefully taking things, for safety and looking at all that sort of aspects and having taking those meetings. I think it's a good appointment. I think Carlos Sainz is very well respected up and down the grid, and I think he'll work well with George Russell as well. So I think that's a good appointment. I guess maybe he feels he's got a bit more time now. He's with Williams to kind of take up some additional kind of responsibility for the grid. But yeah, congratulations to Carlos Sainz for taking that position in the GPDA. All right,
Yeah,
before you want to wrap
solid.
this up, or do you want to add a comment about that? Sorry.
No, solid appointment. Can't really argue. I've just had a quick look there for the driver lineups for the testing. So tomorrow, everyone's going to wake up. McLaren will have Piastri tomorrow morning. Ferrari is
Wednesday
going.
morning.
Yes, Wednesday morning. Sorry. Yes. So Wednesday morning, we're going to have McLaren will go out with Piastri. Then you've got Hamilton, Lawson and Red Bull, Antonelli and Mercedes, Alonso and Aston Martin, Doohan and the Alpine, Bierman and the Haas, Sonoda and the Racing Bulls, Albon and Williams, and Hulkenberg and the Sauber. The afternoon, everyone's changing over, so we're getting half days by the looks of things on Wednesday. So it's Norris, Leclerc, Verstappen, Russell, Stroll, Gasly, Ocon, Hajar, Carlos Sainz, and Bortoleto. Thursday, Ferrari haven't announced their lineup according to Sky Sports at the minute. It's Piastri, Norris for Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon. Red Bull is Lawson all day. The first
Mm.
team to do that for the testing so far. Mercedes are going Russell, Antonelli, Aston Martin, Alonso, Stroll, Alpine, Gasly, Doohan, Haas, Ocon, Behrman. Racing Bulls are Sonoda and Hajar. Oh, no, Williams are going with Carlos Sainz all day on the Thursday as well. And
Okay.
Sauber is going with Hulkenberg and Bortoleto. Friday, the final day, again, Ferrari haven't announced. It's Norris, Piastri, Verstappen all day for the Red Bull, Antonelli, Russell, Stroll, Alonso, Doohan, Gasly, Beerman, Ocon, Hajar, Sonoda, Albon all day, Bortoleto and Hulkenberg. So, interestingly, only Williams, Red Bull, who else? Yeah, Williams and Red Bull, I think, have decided to give a driver a full day each and then split the first day half each. Everyone's half day, half day, half day, half day, which I can see for like fatigue and things like that. Maybe they don't want to do that. But then if you have an issue at the start of your first day, you're not going back in the car till the next afternoon. Like, you're
Mm.
losing your full day's running and. So yeah, there you go. For anybody who was listening, who wanted to hear that before tomorrow, there you go. Find out how it'll work.
Wednesday,
And
Thursday, Friday this week. Enjoy.
yep,
I'm just looking forward to hearing the cars on track and watching as much coverage as I can. In and out of doing work, probably. So yeah, it'll be
yes, me
nice to
too.
to see.
Yes, yes. Favorite
Okay, well,
livery. Favorite livery. I'm going to put
oh,
you in the spot.
okay.
What's your favorite livery? Give me a top three.
I'm going to say they're all very similar, apart from the Racing Bulls, which was obviously different. There's a couple of differences on other cars. So I'm going to say just because they were different, I'm going to say the Racing Bulls, a favorite livery that was revealed. Um, Obviously, I've got my own favorites in kind of McLaren that I always like the orange. I think it always looks fairly
Papaya.
nice.
Stop it.
Papaya,
We're going to get
orange,
emails now.
papaya.
Right.
And I like the look of the Ferrari actually, which looked very nice. The additional white bits or whatever via the sponsorships. But yeah, no, it looked good. You? Top three?
Yeah, probably Racing Bulls, Ferrari, and I'm going to go with Mercedes only because I've seen the render. So I actually now
Mm.
see what it actually looks like properly. It was good. An honourable mention again because I've seen the render to what it's actually supposed to look like is Alpine. At least they've got a car that has paint job on it, unlike last year, which I stumbled across last year's car's picture and like, oh my
Mm.
God. I
It
mean,
was so bare.
you want to run out and fling a towel over that thing. You're like, oh my God, put some clothes on, Jesus. But this year they've actually decided to put on a design. So yeah, there you go. There's my top three with an honourable mention.
Fantastic. Well, on that note, we will wrap up this podcast for the day. We'll be back next week, obviously, to discuss more and discuss what we learned from testing over the next 3 days. So keep your eyes peeled for that on YouTube. You can obviously listen to it on your favorite podcast streaming services also. And also just make sure you share it amongst your friends so we can get more listeners and we can get more kind of content out to you as well as the season progresses. Please follow us on all our socials. Head over to Facebook, X, YouTube, TikTok, wherever you're not at the moment. Go onto our other channels and hit the follow button. Really kind of help us deliver more and more content on all those different platforms. Also, head to our website, www.everythingf1.com, and we pop news articles on a daily basis there from our massive team of volunteers that do it for the love. And they want you to see and read their work. And obviously, it'll be great and informative stuff to keep you abreast of all the information from the motorsport world, covering F1, FE, IndyCar, F2, F3, and any other little stories that pop out that that we think are worth covering, really. So yeah, add that to your favorites, add that to your browsers. Make sure you visit us regularly to get all the latest news. I've been James. I've been accompanied by Coops. Thanks, Coops.
Thank you.
We will speak to you next week with what we've learned from testing. See you then. Bye bye.
Bye.